Hello everybody and welcome to another YouTube video. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to write cleaner code. Now the way I'll be doing that is by going through a script that I wrote about 3 or 4 years ago, just pointing out some of the flaws in it and showing you how we can make some minor refactors and changes that just make this code much cleaner, easier to read, and just better in general. Now, clean code is a subjective topic. Some people will say one script is better than the other, or this way of doing things is better than the other way. But a lot of stuff that I'm going to cover here is not really controversial. This is just stuff that generally will make your code cleaner. And so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But generally, the stuff I'm going to show you here is a best practice, and at least in Python, what you should be doing. So before I actually get into this, I'll just quickly mention that all of the code here, again, is from a tutorial that I made about 3 or 4 years ago. So this tutorial was called Projectile Motion in Python using Pygame. I'll put the video up on the screen. It's still on my channel. So if you want to actually, figure out what all of this code is, because I'm not really going to be explaining what all of it does, we're just going to be refactoring it, then you want to go back to that video, watch that video. It's pretty old, but I'll show you what the kind of output of this code is. So it's actually a little game that allows you to simulate projectile motion. So obviously you have your cursor and you can see that this line is kind of, the line is tracking the cursor. The further you go out, the more power, and then you can pick the angle you want to shoot the ball at. And well, it's just meant to kind of, be a little bit of a physics simulator. Sorry, I didn't implement any bouncing in this, but I have another version, not really of a tutorial, but of a game that I showcased where this ball actually does bounce on the screen. Anyways, enough of that. Just wanted to show you what the output was. Now let's actually go through and refactor this. I'll start by just a high-level overview of all of the code. It's not too long, and then we'll see what's kind of not clean and what we can change. So this is a Python game using Pygame. So you're going to see a lot of stuff related to Pygame. We're not really going to be changing any of that because that's just the module itself. What we will be changing, however, is stuff like the ball class, right? Or like the different functions that we have. So first of all, we can see that I've defined the width and the height of the screen. I've set up a window, I've set up the name of the window, and then I've created a ball class. Now, in this ball class, I have a few attributes, the X, Y, radius, and color of this ball, right? The properties of it. I have this draw method. This method allows me to actually draw the ball onto the screen. And then I have a static method that allows me to calculate the path of the ball based on a power, angle, start X, start Y, and amount of time. Okay, so that's what that's doing. This is kind of running a lot of the physics here. It's calculating where the ball should be moving to at a certain point in time. Okay, we have this redraw window function. This will redraw the window every frame, so you actually see the ball moving. We have find angle. This finds the angle between the mouse cursor and the ball. Yeah, so where your mouse is relative to the ball, that's kind of that line. It's finding the angle of that line. We then create the golf ball. We have a few variables here that we're using. We have our main while loop. We have some clock, and then we have if we are shooting the ball, do all of this stuff. Okay, we defined the line. So the line goes between the golf ball and the cursor, and then we are drawing the line constantly. And then we have an event loop. This event loop is just handling, okay, what actually happens when we press the mouse button down or when we quit the window. Okay, so high level overview there. And as I've scrolled through this, you guys have probably already realized a few things that aren't really that clean and that could be fixed. Now, the first huge thing that screams to me when I read this code here is why are you not using snake case? Now, I'm going to kind of be speaking in third person here because I can't remember what I was thinking when I wrote this code 3 or 4 years ago, but I look at this and I say, okay, the Python convention is snake case, and all of the module stuff like set mode, set underscore caption, it's all using snake case, but everything else is using camel case. Now, it would be okay if everything was just in camel case. That's still not preferred, but at least that's consistent, but we're mixing and matching here, and since we're using a module that has snake case and then we have camel case for the rest of it, that's just not good. That's not very clean. You want to be consistent. Even if you make the wrong choice, at least consistently make the wrong choice so that everything's the same. So the first thing I want to do here is just go and change everything from camel case to snake case, because in Python we don't use camel case. Also, stuff like this, W screen, H screen, these aren't really the best variable names. Yeah, I can figure out this is width and height, but I probably want to change this to just say width and height. And also, these are constants. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. These values I don't think are changing anywhere in the program. In fact, no, they're not. And since they're constants, the convention in Python is to make them capital. So what I'm going to start by doing now is just changing these here to be all capital. So I'm going to say width for the first one. Oops, that's not what I want to do. I want to find and replace. So we'll replace that with width. Okay, replace all. And then we're going to go here and we're going to replace this with in all capitals height. Okay, replace all. Nice. Now, the next thing that I'm realizing, even if I'm just on line 7 here, is that I don't have a space after the comma. Now, this is not a huge deal. Again, these are very nitpicky things, but I like to have spaces after all of my commas. That's just usually best practice. Okay, so now, up here at least, this is fine. Imports are at the top of the program. I can live with that. Let's move down. Okay, next I see this class. Now, the first thing that really bugs me about this class is it inherits from object. Now, I know why I did this, because back when I was, 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, whatever age I was at that point in time, I just always would inherit from object, because in Python 3, all classes do inherit from object, and so like doing this doesn't make a difference. But the point is, we don't need to do this, so there's no reason to inherit the class from object or have the superclass be object, so we can just remove that. The next thing that's bugging me here is this class name does not have a capital at the start. So I'm going to change this, find and replace here, to have a capital, so like that. This is because the convention in Python is to have Pascal case for your classes. So you want to have a capital on the first word, capital on the rest of the compound words inside of there. So there we go. Now this says ball. That's better. Looking nice. Okay, same thing here. I don't have any spaces after my commas, so I'm just going to add those in because, again, that's just something I like. This is fine right here for the init, and the draw method looks fine as well. But the next thing I see, and again, these are all really nitpicky things, but just small things you can do that just make your code higher quality, is that I have a different amount of spaces between my methods here. So notice I have this first method, this second method, and this third method, and there's 2 spaces here and 1 space here, vertical space, right? So what I'm going to do is just keep this consistent, and the Python convention is to have 1 space in between the methods, and so I'm going to make that 1 space and just move this method up. Nice. Now I'm looking inside of this method. There's not really much we can do to clean up here. I mean, I can add in my spaces, which I like, and again, notice how it wasn't consistent, right? I didn't have spaces here, but then I had spaces here. So at least be consistent in what choice you make. And then same thing here. I like to have spaces in between any operations so I can more clearly see what the operator actually is. So we'll just add the space between the minus. All right. Next, I'm coming here to ball path. All right. Now, immediately, I'm a little bit confused because I start by defining angle equal to ang. Now, ang is my parameter. Angle is here. It doesn't look like I'm changing angle at all, and so this doesn't really make much sense for me to do. What I'm going to do is just change the parameter name to angle rather than renaming it inside of here. Okay, so we'll see if we have to change anything anywhere else because of that, but that's fine. Okay, so now the next thing that I'm seeing is, again, this method name is not snake case. So I want to change this to snake case, not camel case. So let's find and replace, and let's replace this with ball_path. Okay, replace all. Nice. Okay, now we have that. Now, same thing here for my vel x and my vel y. I want to change these both to be snake case, so let's replace vel x with vel_x. Obviously, we got to spell that correctly, and vel x is fine. That's descriptive enough, but normally I would probably name that velocity x, velocity y, but that's fine. We can leave it the way it is. Okay, so let's replace, and there we go. Okay, that is better. Now, same thing here with dist x and dist y, and even notice if I go back here, right? I had vel y, but I didn't have a capital Y, and now I have dist x, and I have a capital X, and I have a capital Y, and so I wasn't being consistent, and you want to be consistent. Again, even if you make the wrong choice, just be consistent with making the wrong choice. Okay, so let's go here and let's change this to be dist_x. So replace all, and then let's go here and let's change this to be dist_y. Okay, and again, that stands for distance. It might be useful to actually add the distance x and distance y, but I think that's descriptive enough. Most people can probably figure out what that is. That's the whole point. You want other people to be able to read it. Okay, now I see start x and I see start y. Same thing here. We need to change these so that they are camel case. So start_x, start_y. And by the way, I should have mentioned this before, but feel free to go through this and find all of these errors yourself. I'm just kind of walking through it as I would if I was going to refactor something and clean it up, trying not to cut or anything, but I understand it might be a little bit boring. Okay, so next thing I'm seeing here is that this spacing is fine. I do my velocity, I do my distances, I figure out my new x and my new y. Now the new x and the new y need to be changed as well. I can just manually change that. It'll probably be faster. And then what I'm doing after this is I'm returning new x and new y in a tuple. Now the thing is, in Python, I don't need to do that. When I return multiple values, they're automatically going to be packed together in a tuple, and so I'm going to remove those brackets because even though they don't really cause any harm being there, they're unnecessary, and well, you shouldn't really add unnecessary stuff to your code that just has, the potential to make it more confusing. Now, in this case, you could say, all right, well, maybe this adds some clarity because you're defining that it's a tuple, but anyone that works in Python and who would be reading this would already know that, so that's fine. Okay, so now the top part of our program is looking better. I'm happier with that now, and we still have more name changes to make, right? Redraw window, need to change this so that it is going to be snake case. So let's go redraw underscore window, replace all. Nice. Okay, now we have a few other variable names. I'm just going to keep changing them. I think you guys get the idea now. Golf ball needs to be changed to golf underscore ball. It's going to be a lot of snake case we need to change, or sorry, a lot of camel case we need to change to snake case. All right, so now I'm going inside of here, and I accidentally called this gold ball, so let's just rename this to golf ball. My bad. Okay, and now let's see what else we could potentially change. So we have win.fill 64, 64, 64. Okay, pygame.draw.line, win, color, line. Okay, I'm going to fix the spacing here with the commas, same thing here. But what I want to point out here is that we don't know what 64, 64, 64 is, right? I have no idea what this is. I'm saying fill the window in with this. I know this is a color just because I work in Pygame before, but I don't know what color this is. And so really what I should do here is I should store this in a variable and define what color it is so that I actually know what color I'm drawing on the screen. So I'm going to go to the top of my program here, and I actually don't know what this is, but I think it's a gray. I'm going to put gray in all capitals. Notice because this is a constant, is equal to this, okay? And now I'm going to swap this out here with gray. So this way, when I'm reading this program in the future, I know, okay, I'm drawing gray onto the screen. That's where I'm drawing gray. Now, same thing here. This color is 0, 0, 0. This is black. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the variable name black here. It's going to be a constant as well. I'm going to define black up here just to make it easier to read. Okay, so just small things, but again, makes a big difference. Okay, let's continue here. Line 0 and line 1 is fine. All of this looks okay. And now we're on to find angle. All right, so we need to change the name of this one again. So let's go find underscore angle. Oops, not in capitals. Find underscore angle. Okay, replace all. And now let's look inside of here. Okay, so the first thing I see that kind of bugs me is, well, pause. I mean, we could make this position, but pause I think is fine. But SX and SY. I don't know what SX and SY means. Now, I understand I'm getting the X and the Y of the golf ball, but I don't know why I have to have an S before it. I don't know if that means something specific, and so I'm just going to go ahead and assume that it's actually fine if rather than having SX, I just have X, because I'm not using the variable X, so let's just do that. Replace all. Oops, what did that do? Oh, sorry, we need to do this. Okay, SX, replace that with X, replace all, and then same thing for Y. Okay, so here, this was just a little bit confusing. I don't know why I have SX and SY, and again, they're using camel case, which is wrong. So let's just change that to X and Y, and I think that's fine. Okay, next thing here, I'm using a try and except. Now, I guess this is fine. I don't know exactly why I needed to do this try and except, but really you want to avoid using a try and except when you're not actually accepting an exception. In this case, I'm not accepting a specific exception. I just have a general except, and I'm saying, okay, if something goes wrong in this line, I'll do this. Again, that's fine. You can do that. There's not a huge problem with that, but it's just not best practice. Really, what I should do is kind of handle this error manually and say, okay, if whatever is going to cause this to error out occurs, just don't do this. Do this instead. So replace the try and except with an if and an else statement. That would be better. Unfortunately, I don't know why this is an error. My trigonometry is not primed. I'm sure if I have like a 0 or a negative or something, maybe this fails. But for now, I'm just going to kind of leave that as is and note that that should probably be an if statement, not a try and except. Okay, so now I come here and I say if pause 1 and pause 0, if pause 1 less than y, pause 0. Okay, so all of this looks fine. I'm not really going to mess with this too much because I don't remember exactly what all of this is doing. But one thing that I will note is that I have pause 1 and pause 0. Now that is getting the x and the y coordinate of my position. So really what I would prefer to do is to make a variable called mouse x that is equal to pause 0, and then make a variable called mouse y, which is equal to pause 1. And this way, rather than me just having pause 0 and not knowing if this is the ball position or if this is the, the actual position of the mouse, I have this variable, and that's easier to read. So what I would do now is swap out all of pause 0s with mouse x and with mouse y. So let's just go ahead and do that. We're going to swap this with mouse underscore x. Okay, replace all. We'll have to, why'd that not work? Pause 0, mouse x, Okay, so I don't know why that wasn't working. I think I had one of the modes wrong. I think it was in like a regex expression or something. But let's just replace all of those. I hope that didn't change anything down here, although it might have. Okay, and then let's do the same thing here. So we'll do pos1, replace that with mouse y, and then we'll have to change these back. So these are going to be pos0 and pos1. Okay, nice. So that's all right for now. The next thing I'm realizing, though, is that I'm using golf ball, but I'm not passing golf ball into this function, right? Golf ball is defined down here. I'm not passing that as a parameter. I'm using this as a global variable. That is bad. Don't do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this so golf ball is now going to be a parameter because it should be a parameter. I shouldn't be able to just reference it out of nowhere. And same thing here with line, right? This shouldn't be a global variable. I'm going to put that here, and I'm just going to go and look if anywhere else I have this being a global variable. I don't think so, but that's going to require me make some changes later in the program. So same thing here, I'm referencing golf ball, but it wasn't passed in as a parameter, and so anytime golf ball, this variable is defined anywhere outside of this function, that's what I'm going to be referencing, and that is not good. I don't want that. So I'm going to change this so it's no longer a global variable. Okay. So that's good for now. Now I see golf balls defined here. That's all right. And then I see I have my variables. Now, one thing I would do is I would just add a space here just to kind of separate the fact that, okay, I got all my variables. In fact, this guy can be a part of this kind of stack of variables here. I'll just make sure that my vertical spacing is consistent. So after this function, I should have one vertical space because all of my functions are separated by one vertical space. And you'll note here that the class has two vertical spaces after it. Again, that's kind of a Python convention. Okay, anyways, now we're here into our while loop. So I'm not going to go through a ton of this stuff because a lot of it, if you don't know what it means, it's going to be pretty hard to actually determine. But the first thing I'll say here is I have golf ball. I'm setting the color to white, but again, this isn't in a variable. And so if I don't know my RGB, I'm not going to know that's white. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to say that white is equal to, and then 255, 255, 255. And notice I've kind of put all of my colors beside each other. I put my width and my height beside each other. And this way, it's just much easier for me to figure out what is defined where. And I might even maybe add a comment here and just say, colors and maybe screen size, something like that. This is pretty obvious. I don't need to add this comment, but maybe you do something like that. Okay, now I also just realized that I am using win, I believe, if I go to redraw window, as a global variable here. And so I'm going to take in win as well, or I'll take in window just to make sure that this is not global. And actually, no, we'll just leave it win. Okay. Nice. Okay, so now we're inside of the while loop. So I'm just going to start reading through some of this. Most of it looks good so far. All right, so most of this looks good. However, I see this PO, right? And this is just a really undescriptive variable name. I don't know what this means. Even adding like an S to it, right? This would be a lot better. I know that this is position. But PO is kind of meaningless to me. And even now reading at this, I don't know exactly what this is. I think this is supposed to be the new ball position, but I'm not sure. And so I'm going to change this to say new ball underscore pause. I'm going to assume that's what it is. I'll say new underscore ball underscore pause. Okay. And then new underscore ball underscore pause. Nice. Okay. Now while I'm at this, I just remembered something. Let's go back to this function here. And notice how I said mouse x equals pos0 and mouse y equals pos1. There's actually a way to do this in one line. Now, you can make an argument for which is better or which is worse, but I'm just going to show you the way that you would do this in one line because it's more Pythonic. So if I go to mouse 0 there, or sorry, mouse y there, and then pos0, pos1. So this is kind of the replacement of those two lines there. I'm going to leave it like this because I think this makes sense because these two variables are kind of grouped together in a sense. Okay, but this will automatically, sorry, it needs to be like this actually. This will decompose the position and then put it into mouse X and mouse Y. So the X obviously here, the Y obviously here. Now the other way I had it like this works as well, but that kind of defeats the purpose. This, let's go back here, is called tuple decomposition, and this is just a better, cleaner way to do it. Okay, so let's continue time, power angle, shoot. Okay, that all looks good. This looks good, but now I have my line. Okay, so this is fine. I can define the line here, but I think it would be better if I define the line at the top of my while loop. Now, I understand why I'm doing it. Actually, let's see here. I think the reason I'm doing it after is because I'm calculating the line based on the new golf ball position. So maybe that needs to be there. I won't question the logic for now. I'll leave it there, but typically I would prefer to define that at the top of the while loop just to make it easier to see. Okay, and then I'm redrawing the window, and then I have my event loop. Okay, so this is fine. The only thing that I'm noticing here is this if statement. So it says if not shoot, and then in another indentation level, I have all of this stuff. I'm going to show you a little trick here to avoid having all of these indentation levels in Python. When you have a condition like if not something, what you can actually do is reverse the condition and then simply bypass the rest of the for loop and put everything else below the condition. So what I'm going to do here is say, rather than if not shoot, I'm going to say if shoot, continue. So the condition I wanted to check was if I'm not shooting. I was saying if I'm not shooting, I want to do all of this stuff. So rather than me checking if I'm not shooting and then doing all of this inside of here, I'm going to check if I am shooting, and if I am shooting, I'm going to continue, which means I'm going to skip all of this stuff. So only if I'm not shooting will I end up actually hitting this, and this is just a cleaner way, and this is showing you kind of the break condition of the for loop or the continue condition of the for loop rather than the condition for when this should occur. So this should always occur unless this happens. So again, you can make arguments for which is better, but I prefer to have less indentation levels, and so I usually do it like this because it's easier to read. Now here, I'm just going to fix a few small things. Notice I have pause is equal to this. Okay, that's fine. Now I have line 1, 1, line 2, 2. Okay, I'm just going to space these things out because, again, I like to have spaces between my operators so I can see what's going on here. Okay, let's space that, and that is better. Okay, see, I find this way easier to read than what I had before, and then everything else here looks good. So let's just do a quick spot check through here, see if there's anything else that I could change and maybe clean this up. But I think for now that is all good. Again, I don't really want to get into changing the logic. I'm sure I could mess around with some of the logic and make this shorter code, maybe easier to understand code. But I just wanted to show you a few small and very easy things that you can do in pretty much any program to just make it look cleaner, right? Add these constant variables, always define your constants at the top of the program, makes it really easy to go and change something, right? For example, let's say I was using some color a bunch of times in my program. I could keep writing the same color using the RGB tuple, or I could just define a variable that holds that color and then use that variable everywhere. That way, later in my program, all I have to do is change that variable to change the entire look of the program, right? Stuff like that is just really good practice. I'd recommend you just get in the habit of doing that even in short programs, because the way you practice is the way you're actually going to write, industry code or code that you submit to people. All right, so with that said, I think I'm going to end the video here. I do apologize if this was a little bit boring, but I just wanted to walk through, show you my thought process when it comes to refactoring and cleaning up code. And hopefully you guys got something from this and just saw how you can make your code a little bit more readable and just make it a bit cleaner. One of the big ones, and it only showed up once here, but one of the big things is this, the indentation levels. If you can think of it this way, if you can negate the condition that you're checking and then simply skip the rest of the block if that condition is true, then that's going to save you or just make your code look a lot cleaner, because you're going to be able to avoid all these indentation levels, right? And something simple too to show you here is a lot of times people will do these like very nested if statements. They'll say if this, and then they'll say, if this, if this, if this, and they'll have like 4 levels of indentation, and then inside of here it's like, okay, do this, right? So it's saying, okay, check all of these 4 things, and then if all of those 4 things are true, do this. Now, of course, you could combine these into an and put those in one if statement, but maybe there's a reason why you have it this way. But what you could do here is you could change this and make this flat by simply changing it to be like this. You could say if not this, if not this, if not this, if not this, and then do this. And then what you would do here is you would just say continue or break, right? Depending on what you're doing, you would say continue or break to get out of the for loop or to continue with the next iteration. And then you can do what you want to do. So of course, there's exceptions to this. It depends on the situation that you're in, but always think of it like this and ask yourself, can I make this a flat indentation? Can I do 4 separate if statements, or do I have to nest them in with each other? Because it's really good to avoid having a ton of nested statements. It just makes the code really complicated, and you want to have as many flat kind of levels as possible. All right, so with that said, I think I'm going to end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another one.